Hi, I'm Rashaan Allwood, and welcome to part 2 of my presentations for Organist Launchpad. And for this segment, I'm going to talk about improvising avant-garde and contemporary classical music on the organ. So let's jump right into it. So we're going to use a similar approach that we use to jazz, and that is talking about registration, the type of sounds you want to use, then talking about voicings. How do you want to voice your chords and your sonorities so they're getting across your intent? And lastly, we'll just talk about some kind of improvisation strategies and get into playing a bit. So avant-garde and atonal music. Yeah, it can be really fun. There's so much you can do. And I find playing this music, often audiences are at first kind of shocked, but after a while they kind of get used to the tonal language and they get excited for the surprises and all the different things you can do. So it can be really fun to explore improvising in this language. So sound-wise, I find that it's on an organ where you have multiple manuals, even if you only have 2 or 3, try and get as different sounds as possible on each manual, because then it helps when you're improvising to go to a different manual and you have a completely different color. So that's what I have got going on here. What's nice about this tradition, contemporary classical, unlike jazz, you can borrow some of the traditional tone colors, things like a full swell, you know, all your reeds, your full plenum. So you have your kind of full swell, your loud sound. I like to kind of have a full swell ready. And then over here I have like a reed and some mutations. It's always nice to have those kind of creepy spider type sounds, right? And then here, something just kind of more traditional, something if I want to just have some normal chords, you know, and just sustain them. Then I have like a kind of neutral tone quality. And then down here on the grate, I like to have a nice little flute as well, because if you're playing, you know, some long sonorities and you want some lines, it's nice to have that option, right? So we have our full swell, we have our kind of traditional foundational sound, we have something funky and crazy, and then we have something kind of sweet. So now we have like some very diverse sounds. So when we're kind of moving around the organ, we can get inspired by the sounds we hear and do something fun. And then of course it's also nice to have just kind of a getting louder as you go down for crescendos, you know. Just so you have a dynamic range there. So we have the same quality of timbre, but we have different dynamics. So those are kind of the 2 little things registrationally I like to have, something with a really wide variety and then something kind of loud and with a crescendo setup. So now let's talk about voicings. So just like in jazz, you want to avoid the traditional voicings, like a C major chord. An easy way to do that is to stack chords, right? Why not play C major, F sharp major, E flat major, and you know at the same time with a G in the bass. I didn't put it on any pedals, you know, but you can put just kind of stacking chords as like the kind of beginning to getting interesting sounds. Right, so I'm just taking normal major chords and stacking them. So that's an easy way. Another way is to kind of like in jazz where you build out your extensions, but you don't have to worry about whether it's sounding warm and jazzy. You can kind of like try different things. A combination of major and minor thirds, minor seconds, right? To build up your chords. And you know, just making slight adjustments. Oh, I accidentally had a dominant 7th chord in there. It's a little too tonal, right? So I shift some of the notes. Okay, that's more atonal. I like that. So it's in jazz too. You always have to be ready to shift, little chromatic shifts, just to make sure you're where you want to be. Right, and these kind of voicings work nicely as accompaniment. So here's just like 2 major thirds stacked, another 2 major thirds, right? We can borrow a lot from the 12-tone language where you're trying to use to not have the same note repeated in the chord. Messiaen did these a lot too with like resonance chords where he doesn't want the same note repeating. So there's a G, no more G's in the chord. B, no more B's. So let's put a D sharp. Let's put an F sharp. No more B's. So let's put a C. Let's put an A flat. Let's put a D flat. Let's put an F. Right? Then let's put some fun stuff in the pedal. Right? You can put some reeds on. Right? How can you not have fun playing this kind of stuff, right? And audiences love it in a kind of, just in an open concert where there's, any type of repertoire is appreciated, right? So now we have kind of those long sustained chords. When it comes to lines and melodies, same kind of thing. You want to have these kind of melodies, big range, lots of leaps. It's nice to practice those kind of one note at a time melodies. Again, very Messiaen, where you're just kind of taking different notes and try and repeat as non-often as you can. Try and never repeat pitches if you can. Right? And then you can use pedal to play a chord, maybe some foundations. Right? Play a couple dyads in the pedal, and then give yourself, those melodies. Right? Awkward pauses, asymmetrical rhythm, all those things will help give it this really open, free feeling. All right, so last thing we can do is use a melody. You can always use, this is something I personally love to do, which is using tonal melodies within this atonal language, right? So fun for me. So let's take a melody that we all know, like Ode to Joy, and let's just, first of all, harmonize it with some atonal harmonies. Let's put something in the pedal, and we're just going to take that melody, and we're going to try and play lots of those kind of diverse chords. Right? Right, and then you can start to build up the sound a little bit. Right? And then those kinds of things work nice on big, loud sounds too. And we take advantage of our different sounds. Right? So using kind of tunes that people can kind of hold on to, and then you're playing around with it so much that they might lose sense of it, right? And then you can bring it back in at different points, right? So why don't I try playing something really, really, really crazy and free, and then I'll try and come back into that melody, kind of full organ with some funky chords, right? So we're kind of doing something free, or we can do the melody in long notes in the pedals. Let's try that. So we have something free. So yeah, atonal improvisation, there's so much you can get into. Audiences love kind of being taken for a kind of crazy, wild ride in the middle of a recital. So I love to kind of do these things. Often people will say, oh, I've never heard the organ used that way, AKA with so many clusters. Or I've never heard the organ with such unique registrations, right? So this is your chance to really go crazy and have some fun on the organ. So I would definitely say, have some fun with those voicings, with some atonality, with some avant-garde music, and see all the different possibilities that you have on this magnificent instrument. Well, thanks again for joining me in part 2 of this presentation, where we talked about avant-garde music on the organ. Please join again for part 3, where I'll be with Cadence Brassard talking about arranging popular music for the organ.